In this video, I really want to talk about one of my absolute favorite little topwater baits, and it's one that a lot of you may have not been able to throw, and that's probably because it's very hard to get your hands on it, but that is a Jackall Riser 007. Specifically, the 007 model is the one that I want to talk about. It's the one that I think is the best of these little riser baits. And so anyways, I want to talk about how I like to fish this bait, where I like to fish this, the equipment I like to fish it on, and just why it is so effective. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. Today is the last day to take advantage of the BOGO deal that I have for August, which is if you buy a USA made sun shirt, you actually get a free American Bass t-shirt. This is a tri-blend t-shirt. It's been a very popular t-shirt, but right now it is free with the purchase of a sun shirt. So all you got to do, add the sun shirt, the size and color that you like to cart, add the size of the American Bass t-shirt that you like to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel, and I believe you have until like 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, midnight Pacific time, to take advantage of this deal. So click that link down below in the description. I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the Jackall Riser. This little bait is, man, it is a really, really good bait, but it doesn't always work. But when it does, it will catch some of the biggest bass in your lake. Now, let's talk about when. When do I like to throw this bait? And look, you could throw this thing whenever, but when it seems to be the most effective is in clear water that is fairly calm. If you have some really calm conditions, clear water, that seems to be when this thing excels. I have caught bass when it is actually fairly windy on this bait as well, but that's when they've been really specific on the bait that they are eating. And that is the other thing that you want to look out for with this bait is if those bass, if you've ever gone to a lake and you see like a commotion, you see bass all of a sudden chasing bait fish that are like this big, they are teeny tiny. You will literally see these giant bass chasing these little teeny tiny bass. That is when this thing can really excel. And in my opinion, there is no other lure that skips across the water as well as this one does and looks like those teeny tiny bait fish. It is a dominant bait when the bass are eating those tiny little bait, whether it's shad or just random minnows. Now in a minute, I'm gonna talk to you about how I fish this bait to kind of look exactly like those bait. But now the other thing that I want to talk to you about is what I like to fish it on, because I think that it is very important to have the right setup with this bait. The 007 it's a pretty small bait. I throw this on a spinning rod, and I have thrown this on a spinning rod that is anywhere from 6 foot 9 inches in length to 7 foot 6 inches in length. And so for me, I personally like the longer rod, that 7 foot 6 inch. The biggest reason that I like that longer rod is because I am casting at I like to cast these things a country mile. I like to whip this thing out there as far as I can. Now, if I just so happen to be casting it around maybe cover, or if I'm casting it to the bank where I'm making a little bit more precise casts, that's when I like that shorter rod. But the biggest thing with the rod, no matter what length that you use, it's important that it's a little bit more on that medium light variety. You want a medium light power, and I like a parabolic bending rod. So something that has a moderate fast action. So moderate fast action, that's where you want medium light. You do not want to overpower this bait. And one of the biggest reasons you don't want to overpower it is because it has tiny little treble hooks on this thing. These are number 10s that go on this thing. Very teeny tiny treble hooks, and they can be bent out very easily if you're using even a medium heavy power rod that's a fast action. So I really like a medium or medium light rod when I am fishing this, and again, a moderate action. Now I still like to use braid because it's a top water, and I like to use braid, but it is very important that you tie on a very small leader with this bait, and that's because of how you work this bait. So I like 10-pound braid, and I usually will attach a 10 or 12 pound, it doesn't really matter, monofilament or fluorocarbon leader. And I like a really small leader, like very small, usually like literally a foot long. You could go 2 and 3 foot, that's fine. You could even really go longer than that, but it's not necessary. I like something that is really short. The biggest thing with a short leader is all I'm trying to do is prevent that front treble hook from getting on that line. If you use straight braid, which is what I started using at first, you will make these long bomb casts just to find out that that front treble hook caught the braid in the air, and now you've basically wasted a cast, because if it gets caught on that front treble, the thing does not work at all. It literally just circles around in the water like this. It doesn't work at all. So using a small leader can really help you. I guess you could use straight mono if you wanted to. If you wanted to use a straight like 10-pound test mono or 8-pound test mono, you could do that. But I think that you're going to be able to cast further with that braid to leader. That is the ideal setup. I always replace the treble hooks. The treble hooks that come on this bait are very sharp, but they bend out very easy. So I like number 10s. Usually I go with like a Berkeley Fusion 19 or one of my favorite little treble hooks. They are a very good little bait. So that is kind of the system for how I like to fish it, when I like to fish it. Now I really want to talk about how I like to fish it. And there's really kind of 2 main ways that I'm going to fish this bait. And they're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. One is the way that I like to fish it the most, which is super fast. I'm gonna cast this bait out as far out there as I can, and I'm reeling the bait pretty good. Like I would say a medium fast. It's not really fast, it's a medium fast pace. And the whole time that I'm doing this, I'm also kind of like bobbing my rod. So it's kind of like this double action where I'm bobbing my rod just slightly up and down. And what that does is this bait is literally just skipping across the surface, and it'll jump out of the water like a foot at times and land and keep going. So when I bob it, I'm just kind of propelling that bait, and it is skipping like a stone across the water, and it is coming fast. Now that action, it looks at times to be too fast, but that is the action that I have caught the biggest bass on this technique, because like I said, it imitates, it resembles those small bait fish so well. And so if you have ever seen those little bait fish, they skip across the surface. Like they'll skip 1 foot, 2 foot at times across the surface. This bait looks exactly like that, skipping across the surface. And when they are doing that, I'm telling you, you can have some massive explosions. And if you fish near spotted bass or smallmouth bass, man, they really will unleash on this thing. Largemouth, I feel like they still blow up on it, but a lot of times they'll just suck it down. But I'm telling you what, them smallmouth and largemouth, or smallmouth and spotted bass will absolutely implode on this thing. Now, the other way that I like to fish it is like, you're gonna reel this thing as slow as you can while keeping it on the surface. The Jackal Riser is actually a sinking bait. It's a topwater bait, but it sinks below the surface. If you cast it out and let it sit, it's gonna sink to the bottom. So if you cast this bait out and reel it really slow, this little like fin at the top will just ever so slightly be on top of the surface, and it rotates. And if you reel it slow enough, it just kind of has this swimming action about it. And it just looks like a little minnow just out there chilling, just swimming across the surface. I will typically fish it like this if I am fishing in like dead calm conditions. Really still, dead calm conditions. It's so natural. It just looks like a little bait fish going across the surface, and you will just see these bass come up and just knock that thing off. So this thing is a really deadly weapon. It's a little bit hard to get a hold of. I will leave some links down below. I think that I do know of some places that may have them. I'm not 100% sure, but I will leave some links down below. It is a good little bait. It is a great bait. It is one of the most fun baits, and if you can get your hands on it, it'll change your life. Not really, but it'll be a lot of fun. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and I will see you guys tomorrow.